The other question I had was that I understand what my vortex is from a physical viewpoint, that being alive and human, that I've been having these thoughts and desires, and they're in this vortex that you described. What I don't understand is that once I'm not in this physical body anymore, the vortex then, because I'm creating it right at this moment from a physical perspective, how do I enjoy it when I don't have the body anymore?
Well, the thing about it is that when you think about it, everything that you want is because you believe you will feel better in the having of it. And at the heart, the true essence of everything that you want is an emotional thing. In other words, you want relationships because you want that feeling of co-creation, and that will always be there. Mm-hmm. You want vitality because you like that clear-minded focused, and that will always be there. You want a beautiful environment to live in because you like the comfort that is associated with it, and that will always be there. In other words, there isn't anything, we promise you, when you are no longer in your physical body, you will enjoy your vortex fully. In other words, you won't say, damn, if I only had a tongue so that I could enjoy this ice cream that I've accumulated there. It will not be like that at all.
Thank you.
I've had many, many very exhilarating experiences. And one when I was in Paris.
Can you hear her?
Ago.
Get in there a little.
Get in there. And when I was in Paris a couple of years ago, I had this experience on the metro, riding the train. And it was loud and you couldn't see because you were in a tunnel and there was rocks along the wall, and it just was very, what I would call soothing. It was so loud you couldn't really hear, and I just found myself wanting to stay on there and ride again. And it's much like this ship, soothing beyond like thought. It feels as if my stream was moving so fast. It was almost beyond my physical ability to keep up with it.
Do you think we want to come back to that, but do you think the reason that you liked it, that it felt exhilarating to you, is because you accepted the inevitability of it and the lack of action that was required on your part at the time? Well, did you hear that? In other words, we'll back up there because we want you to try to isolate, if you can, what was so exhilarating about a train moving in a very fast speed or direction where you had really actually no control over it, couldn't really see where it was going, couldn't really even enjoy the vista of where it was at the time, and yet you liked it and wanted it to keep going. So it was a feeling of motion forward, a feeling of dramatic, powerful motion forward that in the moment required nothing on your part in order to keep it going.
The ultimate allowing.
You think? We do.
It felt that way. It felt so soothing.
And so now talk about this ship. Same thing.
It's the same thing. It's like almost a
so
drunk feeling. Not drunk, but like a drug or something. Just.
What about an environment of well-being where what it is? We'll sort of jump ahead and then come back if you want to, but it's the conscious acknowledgement that you've pre-paved it and nothing therefore is required of you in this moment, which is what utter allowing is. Allowing is acceptance in well-being and acceptance and trust in what you've set forth and an acceptance that all things are unfolding in perfect order. That is allowing that you're describing in a very real, visceral sense.
And I liked what you were saying earlier about the meditation CD, and I've experienced different ways of feeling like meditating. Not, you know what I'm saying, is ways of getting in touch, and that was the question: is this sort of a feeling is the kind of feeling that I feel like I want to milk so that I can feel later when I have trouble with lots and lots of thoughts.
Well, here's the thing. This train that you're describing, and let's call it this path of no resistance, is going to just keep moving faster and faster into more and more pleasing vistas for you. There is no end. And what you are describing is really an ultimate moment of being in the flow. In other words, that's the best in the flow description that anyone has offered so far. It's a feeling of being in the flow, not questioning where you're going, not questioning where you've been, just in the moment, in the flow. And you also help us to say, because you said it so perfectly, you help us to say that when you, in the acceptance of the laws of the universe, and in the acceptance of your worthiness, and in the acceptance of your well-being, and in your acceptance of the vortex, in your acceptance of all of that, there's just this eternal blissful state of being, even though you can't define all of it this red hot minute, yes? And that you were starting to go there. What do you mean? You have so many thoughts.
We've discussed this earlier about the peanut gallery, and
we mean that in the nicest way.
And I had a birthday Saturday, and we had a wonderful party, and I hear people come up here and they seem to be talking about limited by age, and I've been seen Esther before talking about friskiness, and I turned 57, and I feel like I am just getting started, and I mean that literally. I'm not bound by age whatsoever. I can't tell you how exciting it is.
Yes, good. Really good.
I want to skip and jump and play and look like an idiot, I guess, by other people's standards. And this has been a glorious opportunity to practice that, because
well, what happens is, and you're really right on the right path, but you really, in order to really keep your train moving and keep it moving faster and keep enjoying the ride, you really have to factor out anyone else's opinion of what you're doing on that train, because they'll get you stuck in a tunnel if they can.
Yes.
They don't mean to. They don't mean to. But and so when you understand that your limitlessness is because you're keeping yourself free in your own thought, and you can't be free in your own thought when you are even aware of the opinions of others. So just factor them out, because you see, you know, you have all of the pieces in place. You know that nothing is relevant except what you've put in your vortex and your relationship with it. Anybody else's opinion of it is irrelevant. And so what you're in the process of doing is taking yourself out of the competition. And eventually you'll stop telling us how old you are in the process too. Because that will be irrelevant. In other words, when you talk about energy and alignment and resistance or allowing or energy in motion, the terminology like age doesn't enter in. In other words, terminology like frequency does enter in. Terminology like emotion and feeling really enters in, but it only because we have introduced it to the subject. In other words, your planet is beginning to understand emotion in whole new ways as a result of the person-to-person exposure to resistance and allowing. In other words, it has become an undeniable concept of physics in your physical world. So just a whale.
Tried to jump a log. But I love it also what you were talking about, the emotion and the music, because I feel very drawn to music and moving my body. So that, you know, I feel like I've discovered other ways to tune out the peanut gallery.
Well, we want you to adore the peanut gallery. We want you to acknowledge the value of the peanut gallery. We want you to know that it doesn't matter, that everything is adding to everything, to see them as cooperative components in many cases, that at a minimum they are adding to the contrast which is causing your expansion. A lot of that peanut gallery is the reason that your train is moving as fast as it is. In other words, just sort of relax in all of it. But the factor for you that you're working on, the piece that you're smoothing out, is that none of you can be present in this physical body without having an awareness of having been observed by others. So you just have to practice your own view of yourself until it is so dominant that it overshadows any other perspective. And when you do that, you will be forever young. You will be forever well. You will be forever vital. You will be forever all of the things that you're wanting to be. But in the moment that you start factoring in what anybody else thinks about it, now you water down your own resolve. So we're talking about focus again, aren't we?
I'm just appreciating it.
Very good. Now what?
Can I ask another question? I do love contrast enough that, and I do take the attitude of bring it on. So I actually really appreciate negative emotion when it is evoked within contrast.
Well, what's the difference? Here's a good question. So in the early days, Jerry and Esther, we encouraged them to play with us in any way they could think of. So they went and got lost out in the city of Phoenix, and their friends hid somewhere. And the game was Jerry and Esther would utilize Abraham to find these friends. And it was a huge, huge area from Scottsdale all the way across, 50 miles in all directions was where the game was to be played. And Esther found that she could feel an aversion to going that way or an impulse to go that way, but it's really a very small difference whether you're feeling the aversion to go that way or the impulse to go that way.
Right.
In other words, it all ended up in them going that way.
Right.
And eventually they found them 14 Snicker bars and 3 tanks of gas later. They found them. Esther said, "This will not be a game we will play again." The sun was coming up, and they started just after the sun went down. In other words, it was a long exploration into the talents of Abraham. And when they found them, they said, well, first we went to the dumpster behind the Mountain Shadows Resort, and their friend said, we were there. But we felt like we should move somewhere else. So all night they'd been chasing them. They went there, and they went there, and they went there, and they went there, and they went there. But the point that we're making with the story is that there was really a strong feeling of not going that way, but going that way. It was before Esther was receiving us verbally. She was just feeling impulse. And so she would say, well, it's not that way, it's that way.
Well, I guess what I was trying to explain, and I know you felt me, and I felt your answer in that why go when you can feel. The reason I love the contrast of my experiences when they come to me, it's like it's another red flag of something I can identify to get me into the vortex, so I can clear it.
Yes. So what is a red flag? A red flag is awareness of something unwanted. And what does it always mean? Something wanted just got queued up in a stronger way.
Exactly.
What else does a red flag mean? Don't go that way.
Yes.
But the red flag also means that's not the way. And if that's not the way, then that must be, or something else must be. So a red flag, Esther had this identical conversation with us a few days ago where she was feeling guilty about red flags. Mm-hmm. And we were explaining to her that the red flag just means, hold on. There's a solution, and you aren't in vibrational proximity to the solution yet. But don't move toward the red flag. At least just hold where you are. And it also makes you aware, in other words, does a red flag, we'll ask you this, does a red flag make you more solution pointed?
Yes.
When you feel a red flag, doesn't it make you look for the solution
more? And that's
more?
what I really appreciate about the red flags. I don't have to go to the red flag. I love the practice of massaging myself into the vortex with the red flag. So I'll be looking at something that's happening in my life, and the moment the emotion is big enough, I realize that my higher self is seeing it so much different than I am, that all I have to do is realize that the difference is there, and all I have to do is massage it just a little bit around.
Well stated.
And it's such a quick transition. It's like, okay, well, and it's words.
But I want to say to you that the vitality that is present within you, what you're doing is really working well for you. And we would far, far, far rather that you be on this sort of edgy place. You called yourself a cliff jumper.
Yes.
But we're certain that you never jump off a cliff without being sure that you can fly.
That's it.
We can feel that from you. We can feel that from you powerfully. And and it is so much more refreshing to feel this vital and alive than to feel relaxed and calm.
Yeah.
Really. In other words, and the thing that you are helping us to say, and you are really articulating it magnificently, is that you get to choose. In other words, you can feel if it gets going a little too fast, you can ratchet it back. But you really do. You see, what's happened with you is you are understanding that you are the creator of your experience, and the contrast doesn't feel like unwanted and wanted. The contrast feels like variety from which you are molding the clay.
Yes.
This is exactly the way you intended to feel as you made the decision to come forth into this physical body.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, it did.
Thank you.